everyone, today we are going to be ranking all of the Splatoon 3 specials. To be clear, this is not on how good they are, this is about game design. So for example, do they build good habits? Do they look good? Are they fun to use? Are the effects they have on the game good? Are they fun to fight? That kind of thing is what we're going for. So we're gonna get started. Without any further ado, you can be sure to subscribe if you want to see more, and let's get into it. I gave missiles its own video, so I'm not going to talk about it a lot here. It isn't bad. If I had to pick one change from the video I did on it, please make it so you can't missile someone if you don't have light of sight on them. That alone would fix so many problems with the special. Now, Reef Slider is pretty interesting because I think it's more of a simple aggressive special, which is something we don't really have a lot of. You know, things like Crab Tank have a lot of different firing modes and ways to move around. Stuff like Inkjet is like a state transformation special where you have to figure out how to aim with it and stuff. This is just press the button, go a direction, and explode. It's really easy. And I kind of like that. I think that we do need one of the specials like that, and this one definitely works for it. It has a nice path, so it's very easy to see where it's going. The explosion part seems to be invincible, but the part where you travel there isn't, so it has a fair bit of vulnerability. It has a bit of end lag, which is a bit awkward, but I don't think there's a good way to avoid that, so that's going to be a clunky part of the special. The main thing about it I really like, though, and it's something I missed in my analysis, is you can actually blow up the Reef Slider early at any point during your trail, which adds a lot to it while still being really simple. Like, you can maybe fake going really far, and then once you get near a ledge, blow up to catch someone on it. That adds a ton to it. I think it has a good amount of back and forth. I really like it. I will put this in great. Alright, why don't we do Inkjet next? Now, I rated Inkjet pretty highly in my Splatoon 2 specials tier list, but now we're being held to higher standards. There's better design in this game. Does Inkjet still hold up? Yeah, I would still put it in great. I think the special still works. The whole transformation is pretty cool. It has a good amount of depth with the shot, and being able to use squid form, you're fairly vulnerable in it. I think it has a bit too much range, but it's not really that problematic, and that's kind of a factor of Splatoon 2 specials have more range, so going to Splatoon 3 makes it feel a bit weirder, but I think Inkjet is the least offensive out of any of these. I do think Inkjet has one big problem, though, and another special has this too, which is in Splatoon 2, Inkjet is very, very dependent on armor in order to be good, and without armor, it'll be a bit weaker. Now, you can say this is a balance thing, but in this case, I think it means Inkjet needs something a bit new to compensate for that. So I think it's more design-wise, they have to give it something that it doesn't have right now. And depending on what they add, that could lead to it being higher. But in its current state, with no changes to it outside of just some balance adjustments, I'd put it in great. I think it's still a really nice special. It just needs a little bit of tweaks now that armor doesn't also exist. I don't have too much to say about Ink Strike. I'm gonna put it in good. I think it is a good step up from TENTA Missile in the case that it is a limited throwing range. You are vulnerable, it doesn't go super far, but it does still have a lot of displacement and a lot of painting capability. I think it's a bit too extreme for me to rate it higher, but honestly, it's not too far off from being in great. I still really like how fluid the special is. It looks amazing, and it still seems like you can paint over them like you can with Splat 1 Ink Strike, so it's not bad by any means, just not as good as the others. Let's talk about Tacticooler, one of the many support specials we have in this game, and I do really like it for quite a few reasons. I think that the deployment system is perfect. It has the same vulnerability that Bubbler does, which is if you want to get the boost, you have to go to one location and push in, which makes your push very predictable. Or if you want to go from an off angle, like a flank, you just don't get to have the buff. I also really like the buffs they gave you. Swim speed and run speed promotes a lot of aggressive play, and it also seems to do that new ability that influences the squid roll and surge, allowing you to take advantage of those movement options more. So with that being said, right now it's only being rated in great. Now listen, I love the effect, I love the deployment of it. It's really awesome, but it has one problem to me. I think it's a bit underwhelming to use. Personally, I think only swim speed, only run speed, and only the new ability is a bit too little of an effect. And I think for some players that could be fairly negligible, especially in a solo queue environment. And it's not just a balance thing here, because I want it to have more effects than this. My top picks are Sub Defense Up and Ink Resist Up. I think if you had 1 to 2 mains of those 5 abilities, then it would be a lot better. So if they add a few more effects to it, I'll put it in near perfect. Like with Inkjet, 1 I could see moving up very easily on launch. But as of right now, with only those 3 effects, I don't think it gives enough to be really fun to use. So Booyah is another special that I rated really highly in the Splatoon 2 specials tier list. However, now that we're in Splatoon 3 with a bit of harsher standards, I have to rate it a bit lower, in this case, in good. I think Booyah Bomb has 2 factors attached to it that while they were fine in Splatoon 2, in this game are a bit less excusable and need tweaking, which is the HP and the range. I think the HP adjustment could be adjusted in two ways. One, you straight up have less HP than you do before, or two, you have decaying HP, so you lose it really fast after popping it. I think either of those would work fine, but I think it gives a bit too much health right now. It's still not that bad. You can obviously shred it well with teammates, and most weapons deal good damage to it, but it's not really the level I'd like it to be at. The second thing is throwing range. Like I've mentioned before, the range values of Splatoon 3 specials are much less than Splatoon 2. So specials that have more range now start to have a bit more of a problem than they do in that game. I think the throwing range of Booyah Bomb should be slightly decreased, probably by about 10 to 15%. I think if we get either of these changes, it'll go into great, but as of right now, I'm going to put it here. It's very easy to paint over. It doesn't displace too much. It still has a fair bit of vulnerability, and the HP isn't too poorly designed, so I'm still mostly fine with it, but it could be better if they're willing to adjust it a little bit more. All right, let's knock out Crab Tank. It's quick. It's perfect. I've talked about the first 5 specials in their own video in full detail, so I'm not going to spend too much time on these, but Crab has you vulnerable the entire time whenever you're firing. The roll mode is cool. 2 different modes of fire that have interactivity. You instantly get in and out of the special, so there's very little downtime. It is 100% has the best interactions in the game. I love the way you're always vulnerable whenever you try to have an impact on other players. It's so perfect, and the back and forth between this special and fighting it are going to be amazing. Super good job with Crab Tank. Big Bubbler is near perfect. It fixes a lot of the design issues of support specials because it's actually based around your positioning. The top is breakable, the duration is only 5 seconds, so it's not too long, and it has a beacon on the inside, which is really cool depth that could be used for teammates. I think out of all the support specials, this one could turn into an aggressive one really easily when paired with weapons that go really far in by using it more selfishly to protect itself. It's super close to being perfect, and I can't really explain why it doesn't go up there, but it just doesn't hit the same highs of a different supportive special, which is Ink Vacuum, which is absolutely going in the perfect tier. Ink Vacuum is not just one of the best specials in this game in terms of design, it's one of the best supportive specials I have ever seen. It literally incentivizes you to block for your teammates because that's how you charge the special. And then when you charge the special, you get a playmaking shot, so you get to do a skill shot thing as a support. Like, that's so cool. It's so simple. There's like not much else to say besides that. It eats bombs, it has a limit so you can't eat too much damage, it's vulnerable on the sides. Like, all of that is good too. But the core idea of incentivizing teamwork and rewarding the user is just perfect. This is exactly how support specials should be designed. I am so looking forward to using it. I hope it's on one of my weapons. I am very, very torn between if I put Inkstorm in good or meh. Now, this special doesn't do anything super offensive. It's a displacement special, but it doesn't do too much damage. It doesn't force you out of too much of an area. It has a decent bit of depth to it because of how you throw it, determining where it travels. It doesn't have infinite range, so it's definitely fine, but it doesn't really have the insane depth to it that a lot of other specials have, and the duration is still a little bit long. I guess I would still put it in good, honestly, because I think it's less annoying than Booyah and Tri-Strike, but I do wish they would give a little bit more to it, give it some little bit of extra depth. Maybe being able to curve the path a little bit could be good. I'm not quite sure. I just wish it had a bit more to it, but what it does is nice. And I have to give it bonus points because you can use it as mist on certain maps with how you throw it, and that's kind of cool, though that shouldn't be something you should be able to do super easily, and I think that's kind of a little bit of cool depth, so I gotta mention that, I guess. Trizooka is near perfect. This is very simple. Inkzooka was a smart design special that was vulnerable in close range. It was a very skill shot weapon, but in Splatoon 1 it had too many shots and too jank a hitbox. So in this game, you only have 3 shots and the hitbox is more normal. It has a really interesting vulnerability in the fact that it doesn't paint its feet very well, so you have to be dependent on sub-weapons or wasting one of your 3 shots, and that's really cool. I think the special has a decent amount of back and forth, and it doesn't have the extreme nature of Splatoon 2, so I'm a fan of it. Alright, so Ultra Stamp is still imperfect. Now, I do think this has the same problem of Inkjet, to where without armor, the special's gonna struggle. Even more so since Stamp isn't as good a special as Inkjet in Splatoon 2, but I think it's easier to fix because Ultra Stamp doesn't really need to add anything new to it. It already has a ton of different modes. The special just needs to be better balance-wise, and since this tier list does not give a crap about balance, I'm not gonna rank it any lower than perfect where it was in Splatoon 2. Killer Whale 5.1. I desperately want want to rank this higher than good, but I have to put it there. I like that it has a limited radius like Killer Whale normally, but the global range does still stick out, even though it's more useful if you're pushing with it, and the fact that it has that limited hexagon radius like I've mentioned twice before. I still can't rate it as highly, and I'm not the biggest fan of the beams tracking people. I get they did that so it didn't just insta-kill people like in Splatoon 1, but I still think it could be a bit too annoying to be any higher. Wave Launcher, from the polls I've done on my YouTube, is the special very few people want to talk about, which is a shame because I think it's one of the best design specials we've seen. It fixes the main problem of Echolocator right off the bat, which is it's no longer a global insta-chaining special, but it's now a thing you throw down and deploys, and then it sends out waves that you could jump over, which is such a cool interaction. Like, you can jump, but that'll make you more predictable in fights. It'll slightly give away your location. Now, these rings can also deal slight amounts of damage, which is cool. The location effect isn't too extreme, and now that it feels avoidable, it's much more fair. It has unique potential for holding down areas, but not forcing people out of them completely, more just helping in fights. The combo potential is cool. The way the special looks is amazing. I love everything about it. It's so cool. I did not expect a reworked Echo to get this high up on the list. They really nailed it perfectly than I thought they ever could, and I'm really happy about that. This is such a cool special. Alright, and finally, Zipcaster. I'm gonna put this one in perfect too. I debated moving it a bit lower, but you know what? I think the ability to just grapple hook anywhere and use your main weapon is awesome. It has a fair bit of vulnerability, the recall, like with Inkjet, works amazingly, and I just think it looks so fun to use. Possibly the most fun out of any of these. So that's the list. We have 14 good to perfect design specials and only one flawed one. A lot of these could even move a lot higher. Some of my prime candidates for this would be things like Inkjet, TENTA missiles, Tacticooler, Booyah Bomb, and Inkstorm. I could all see being even better with a few changes. If I had to rate the special design right now, I would give it a 9 out of 10. Don't take this rating too much to heart because the game isn't out and I'm gonna have to redo this whole list when it does to make sure everything perfectly lines up. But for now, I can easily say this is an improvement over Splatoon 1 and 2, and if TENTA missiles gets fixed in some miraculous way, then just maybe there's potential for a 10 out of 10. That's my list. Let me know what you guys think and what specials you're excited for, and I'll see you all next time.